tonight. Thank you guys to be here. First, let me send my condolences to the family of Coach Sean Clark and the UCF community for his passing. He's someone I consider a dear friend and was a great human. So my condolences to all of them. As we move forward and looked at this past Saturday, you know, I talked about being all in and what that means in the post-game press conference, and I think kind of showed up. I want to thank all the great fans that filled the stadium and had a sellout, and I appreciate the effort by the young men. We talked about it, what that means, right? That all in, that attitude. And I mentioned it, it started with the preparation all week, having no fear for who our opponent is and an understanding of what we need to do to go out there and attack and the right attitude and the approach to this game. And then secondly, that L, the little things. It came down when it was all said and done, came down to ball security and taking the ball. You guys have heard me talk about all the time that a keys to victory is taking care of the football and finding a way when it's all said and done to knocking that ball out. And then thirdly, obviously, little things. Love. And the way we play for each other. And obviously our fans showed the love towards us, and the guys played collectively as a team. So when we talk about being all in, I wanted to further explain what that meant to you. What I want to tell you now is, obviously, moving ahead, we got conference game. It's great to beat the Blue Bloods, and it's wonderful to get the wins versus the Power 4 teams. But our focus, just as importantly now, is on a conference game. I said at the beginning of the season, our goal is to win the conference championship. We can only do that 1 week at a time. We have to go on the road, play a night game. Again, it's good to be on national TV again on ESPN2. But the opportunity to play our first conference opponent and playing on a grass surface, so there's going to be some challenges to that, and just getting our guys continue to focus on the task at hand. But they'll be locked in. We've talked about using the blinders and proceeding accordingly. So I'm excited for that and ready to take on these challenges that approach.
Ryan, I know you're television on your own program, but if you look across the league, like after Cincinnati and those schools left, it's perceived as a watered down league, and then you've got you guys beating Arkansas, USF, and everything, just everybody beating those power conference. How does that help each other in terms of whether it's recruiting or brand perception?
Yeah, that's a great question, Frank. I think you look at this conference from top to bottom, it's stacked, it's loaded. You see what teams do. I mean, even the night before our game, Tulsa going on the road and beating Oklahoma State handily. And then you look at what South Florida did earlier in the year. Tulane has done earlier there. So many of our teams. North Texas is undefeated. Army going on the road and beating Kansas State. There's so many examples, and it just tells you, man, this conference is still very, very talented. And you look at some of the resources that some of these other schools are putting in. We understand that every week's going to be a battle. I think it speaks volumes about the American Conference and the opponents that we're going to have to play coming up. We can only take it 1 week at a time, but there's going to be challenges every single week. Everybody's got players. But it speaks, down the end of the road when we talk about the college football playoffs. As you guys know, I don't like to talk about that much. Certainly the winner of this conference will be represented.
But do you think like a USF beating Florida residually helps you, and you guys beating Arkansas residually helps them just in terms of what you guys are trying to do recruiting-wise and things like that?
Absolutely. I think what it does is it puts all these teams on a national stage. So when the opportunity comes to play those games, people are going to sit there and say, wow, this is a determining factor long term. But yes, recruits see it, and I think it's great. I think everybody understands. I certainly think when we're recruiting against some of those Power 4 teams, the player will say, well, you beat them, so why wouldn't I come to your place?
Coach, when you're facing a newer coaching staff, especially coming off a bye week, what are some of the challenges around that?
Exactly. Well, we know facing teams that are coming off a bye, they've got an extra time to kind of prepare. They're going to come with some new things. We're studying only a 3-game plan. I can sit there and look at what Coach Kitley did at Texas Tech and kind of get a feel for what he does offensively. We can look at, their D coordinator's been at a few places and kind of get a feel for that. But they mix it up pretty darn well. And I think coming off a bye, they're going to have some different answers for us. They've been able to study our opponents, and obviously with our coordinators being here, they've got a bigger menu to look at and how they may try to attack us, offense, defense, and special teams. So it comes with its challenges. I've got to be careful that we're not sitting here, and you guys have heard me talk about this, chasing ghosts, right, trying to find answers. We're just going to have to prepare to the best of our ability, make sure that we are handling things the right way, because there's going to be some in-game adjustments coming from their bye.
You look at, obviously, a lot of people are talking about, you talk about Flinders, a lot of people are talking about the win over Arkansas. What's that conversation like with the team? Obviously, they probably see some of the stuff you're talking about Memphis and getting a big win. What's that conversation like about turning the page and moving on?
Yeah, Jonah. Look, I congratulate them like I do every Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon in the team meeting and say, "Great job." But there's so much to learn from this, and there's so much to grow from. It was certainly wasn't a perfect game in all three phases. We all 200 people in this program have room for improvement, and we coached them very hard off of that film because it wasn't perfect. It wasn't always pretty either. The one thing we can hang our hat on is the grit and the determination of these young men. But other than that, there's a lot of work to be done in between the white lines. And so our guys understand that. They know that we're not talking about this game. I say I'll have some media obligations, and you may hear it come out of my mouth, but we've got to turn the page. We've got to put the blinders on and have 100% focus on the task at hand. And we're going to do, starting today, just making sure our guys are dialed in because we do have a tough challenge going on the road versus our first conference opponent.
Coach, when you look at it as far as the way the B-League played at the beginning, Brandon Lewis played at the beginning of the game, do you think that was just nerves on his part since he had never really been in a big game like that at home and on that kind of stage?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jarvis. I think for him, it's twofold. One, where does he get comfortable? I think he actually made some great decisions. A lot of people sit there and say, he didn't complete a lot of passes early on, but he threw a lot of balls away, right? And I think earlier in his career, if you watch him in his previous film, he would have thrown across his body, it would have been an interception. So I told him, one of the things I've seen in his growth is making smart decisions with the football. Hey, it's not there, I'm going to throw the ball away. And as a fan, you may sit there and say, well, that's not great. Well, I'm pleased with that. Now, there were some throws that I know he wished he could have back that certainly weren't throwaways. And I think that's part of him getting settled. We all know he's an energized young man. He's passionate. Do we need to sit there and run him the first 10 plays of the game to get him calmed down? Maybe that's the plan. But for him, I think he's just so grateful to be in these type of environments and those type of games. But I know as the game progressed, he settled down a little bit, and we'll find the right plan moving forward for him.
With Greg back, how do you envision the kind of split with him and Sutton and the rest of the running backs? Is it like a play-to-play thing, drive-to-drive? How do you want it to work?
Yeah, going into the season, we sat there and said those are two dynamic running backs that we were excited to have and can be dynamic in this offense. And so I think as we progress, I think with Greg being hopefully healthy, not 100%, I don't think anybody is at this time of year. Sutton wouldn't say he is either. But just kind of seeing what they can handle. And there's certain run plays that may be better suited for this one rather than that one. There's certain pass concepts. And then getting a feel as the flow of the game goes, right? Who's kind of getting into it? Is it a rep count? We don't sit there and say, okay, hey, he's got to have 40, he's got to have 40, because we trust the other running backs as well. So I think every week we'll look at the game plan, see what suits them. But they both are capable, and they both have a lot of things that help us win games.
The offensive line against Arkansas, obviously, Chris goes out, ends up coming back in the game, and then the offense has to stay on the ground. They did behind those guys. What did you learn about that group?
Yeah, well, first, give Chris Adams a lot of credit. I mean, I don't know if anybody saw him trying to warm up at halftime. I sat there and I said, there's no way he's going. And, he rolled himself up pretty good. He was in a significant amount of pain, and he couldn't barely walk coming out. And I was like, no, we're not doing that. It's going to be detrimental to our team. And I certainly don't want to put out a young man that can't protect himself. And sure enough, we line up in the first huddle. He removes our offensive line coach out of the way and says, I'm playing this game. And sure enough, he did a fantastic job. So kudos and credit to him. What a tough young man. And the doctor said, hey, he won't risk himself for any further damage. But, yeah, I think the adrenaline, the understanding of how important this was to go out there and play. So credit to him. I thought the offensive line, all in all, played pretty solid. But you'll sit there and go back. There's still some mistakes that were made. I think like any time, I'll never stand here and say an offensive line played a perfect game. But all five collectively did some really nice things, and I think it's something they can grow upon.
Coach, when you talk about you guys are a morning practice team and then you're going on the road and a late start, how does that kind of change your mentality, especially on Saturday?
Yeah, so we'll lose an hour going east, obviously. But I think at the same point, that's okay. So 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. And we've had some of these night games. I think part of it is understanding, okay, hey, when we get to the hotel, let's get off our feet, let's get some rest. They're coming off a bye, like you mentioned earlier. So just getting that mentality when we get there, okay, Friday, let's get some film in, let's get some rest, we'll wake up. We kind of do another film session, a brief walkthrough, and then get them back off their feet, right? And you actually encourage them to maybe take an hour nap so they can reset themselves and be ready for the game. But I think anytime you go on the road, it's just going to figure out for things. Like, I mentioned we played at Georgia State. Where are the lights located, right? Where's the clock located? How's this going to work out? And so they'll be no different. We haven't played on a grass surface in a while. We do sometimes practice out on a grass. We'll see how the weather works out this week for us. But yeah, I think most teams now in college football are morning practice teams. So these night games are providing different challenges.
Right, every coach will say that they trust their backup. So when it's time to put your money where your mouth is, Arrington makes the read instead of just handing it off. What does that say about his confidence and comfortability level to make the read instead of just doing what would have been just the obvious decision?
Yeah, I think what's so unique with that is, and I mentioned this to the team yesterday, is let's start with Arrington, right? I don't think at any point with 1:30 left in the game did he think he was going to go into this football game to help win this thing. But he'd prepared all week. He's prepared all season he's a starter. And just having the fact that his helmet was on, his chin strap was ready, mouthpiece was right there. He was ready to go, and he'd stayed dialed in all game. Even at halftime, looking at, hey, this adjustment, this, taking notes, make sure he's paying attention to the iPad. That stuff's so important because you never know. It may be a shoelace, it may be a helmet, it may be an injury, and your number may be called. And for him to go in there, trust the read, and to go and just keep his legs churning, and more than anything, the will to go get that first down. It was so great to see him do that because I haven't seen him do that. Now, he's usually in a red jersey, so we don't let anybody get near him. But the fact that he kept running those feet and found a way to get the first down is phenomenal. And then speaking of that, let's look at another guy. And someone had asked this prior. Chris Bracey. Okay, Chris had been a starting safety for us earlier in the season, and his role may have switched a little bit, right? We saw Jeremiah Jordan had been getting a little bit more reps, and Chris's had been reduced. In fact, with Jeremiah getting the start, it's very easy for Chris Bracey to sit there and say, well, it's not my opportunity. These coaches are screwing. Credit to Chris. He said, what can I improve upon? How can I get better? How can I help this team? Is it special teams, what it may be? And then the first play, Chris goes in later in the game than he probably wanted to, gets a TFL. And then an opportune time when the game's all, closing down, the winding seconds, goes and makes a game-changing play. And his number was called, and he showed up and rang the bell. So I think that speaks volumes to the way, number 1 through 120 pay attention, they care about it, and they're dialed in.
Speaking along that, Cruz Law is another guy that he made some plays. I mean, he was the one hanging on for dear life. How have you seen him be able to, maximize his opportunity?
Yeah, look, Cruz didn't play. I don't think he played a single down of football last year at North Carolina. And he comes here and started to see his role increase on special teams here, and now he's finding some holes in there to fill at the linebacker spots. And I think every week we're going to continue to see him if he's able to make plays, play a little bit more for the Memphis Tigers. So pleased with him, and I think that's what you want. We saw we had some true freshmen, right, that are playing more on special teams. We kind of talked about how Brady Cluse's role grew last year through special teams. I think we saw, Jalen Lewis, Ian Williams, some true freshmen that you guys we've never talked about. Now all of a sudden they're making plays on special teams. If you can start to trust that role, now can they find a way on the field otherwise? But Cruz is one of those young men that we have high expectations for, and I think he's going to continue to help out this program.
Does that play by Arrington make you think about some more packages for him?
So if you guys remember last year, he had a specific package. It was one play. It was a -2 or 3 yards. And so I think that, it was hanging over his head for quite a while, like, this is my stat line, -3 yards. I always say this. It was like after we lost the Cotton Bowl, like, I've got a losing record. I'm 0-1 for a long time. This is terrible. Let's go and play another game real quick. So for him, it was about the opportunity to go out there. But we'll see. I think all those guys have earned the right. And that's what we're seeing is guys are practicing the right way throughout the week, Jonah. And that's what you want, because if I can trust you on a Tuesday or Wednesday to do what you're supposed to, it makes it a lot easier when your number's called on a Saturday, go in there and handle your business.
A couple quick questions. Okay, so the foot on Rosier, how is he feeling now? And also, big body, Botiford did not play, I don't think. Or did he get a couple of snaps in the game?
Botiford did play. But did you want me to pull Greg or something out of that game? Yeah, so, but Greg we believe Greg should be back to normal. Obviously, we'll continue to monitor him, just like a lot of our guys. But yeah, the plans for Greg to play whatever role is allotted for him moving forward, and then Botiford was healthy in the game.
Coach, after every big win, it seems like the main conflict is mentioned for Josh. How hard is it to deal with the outside noise?
Well, look, I'm grateful, and that's a testament to the great supporting staff, the coaches, the assistants, right, our great community, the fans, the administration. That's a testament to all the hard work they've put in. And so why that's great, our focus, and just like we just talked about, is on the next opponent. And that's all that matters. Look, I've got a wonderful job here, and I love it here. I think, we talk about being all in, right? I'm all in on the focus on FAU. And that's really where the task at hand needs to lie. And our players and everybody else understands that. I appreciate the headlines, but I don't have time to read the headlines. Our focus is 100% on the film and getting ready for that. But all those other things, that's a testament to our great community, to all those people that have poured in and are all in on this Memphis football program.
In conversations with players, whether they're players that have been here for a couple of years or brand new to the program, one thing that's common is they talk about the amount of work they put in and how proud they are of kind of this win and where they, how much it means to them with all the hard work they put in. Is there something unique about what you guys do in terms of the hard work, or is it just you guys, as a culture, as a team, you just bust their tail all the time?
I think every 18 to 23-year-old will tell you they work hard, right? That's the nature of it. But I'm a firm believer, right? 136 Division I football programs, they all work hard, right? Every single one of them lifts the weights in the off season. They all do conditioning. They're all out in there in the heat. They're all getting coached hard. But I think what's so unique about these guys is they've bought into the way we do things, right? And everything in this program matters. I think there's a direct correlation. You talked about the pride in winning games like this, and they talk about the hard work. But I don't think it's just in the weight room and out there on the field, right, in the hot days of August. I think so much of that is a correlation of them doing completely everything on a holistic approach that makes us win football games, right? Like, I brag about this all the time because it's so important to me. 3 of the last 4 years, the highest graduation rate in the conference, like, that's hard work. Right, the highest GPA in program history last spring. That is hard work, right? Top 5 in the country in community service hours. That is hard work. And so credit to these young men. I think when they talk about everything they've poured into this, they poured into this university, this school, this community, this football program. That's a direct collaboration of everything that's involved. Oh yeah, and by the way, we do work really hard in between the white lines and in the weight room and in the conditioning. And I think, the young men deserve so much credit because they've bought into this. And that's what's so fun sitting here as the head coach, is that these guys will sit there and say, okay, what do we need to do and how do we need to do it? And so there's never been a falter. I've never stood up here in a press conference, win, lose, or draw on a Monday and said, well, we just didn't play very hard. And over my dead body will I ever say that, right? Our guys are always going to play hard. They're going to come out swinging. Is it always perfect? No, there's some plays that we need to have better effort in. But I think that buy-in, that approach by these guys has been tremendous.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.